I sometimes think as here I sit of things I have done, which seemed in doing not unfit to face the sun. Yet never a soul has paused a whit on such, not one. There was that eager, strenuous press to sow good seed. There was that saving from distress in the nick of need. There were those words in the wilderness. Who cared to heed? Yet can this be full true or no? For one did care, and, spiriting into my house, to, fro, like wind on the stair, care still, heeds all and will, even though I may despair.
Alison, very unusually, Hardy actually puts the initials here of the person that this poem is about.
Yes, he does. He actually puts F-E-H at the bottom of the poem, which we think refers to Florence Hardy. It was Florence Dugdale as her maiden name.
Yeah, with Emily as her middle name.
Yes.
So it is possible, I suppose, it could be Florence Henniker, but I don't think so because she had 4 initials. Now tell us, this is a love poem, really, isn't it?
It is. It's a very obvious love poem to Florence. They obviously had a very strong bond, and it's just showing how much he cares for her and how much he relies on her as well for emotional as well as physical support.
Now, we're here on the front lawn at Athelhampton, and why is that relevant to this poem?
Well, they did come here, obviously. They're often guests of the then owner of Athelhampton, and we can imagine them here on the front lawn having drinks on a beautiful summer's evening on this wonderful setting.
So, Mark, I mean, I think this is actually rather a happy and upbeat poem, but I know you're perhaps a little bit more cautious, perhaps because it does finish with the word despair after all.
I think with Hardy, he really frames his poetry. If you look at the opening, I sometimes think, as here I sit, of things I have done. I mean, essentially, it's all about him, isn't it? I mean, is there the self-indulgent Hardy here, contemplating what he's done in the past catching up with him, almost like the past catching up with Henchard and the Mayor of Casterbridge, and almost sort of reflecting on his life. I mean, I do think there are more sort of positive poems that he's written, but I think like Great Things, for instance, which is a real positive poem. But I think here he really contemplates his life, because obviously he was getting on at this point, you know, in terms of age, and I think reflecting what he'd done in his life. And I think, yes, I can see where you're coming from. I think there are glimmers of hope in the poetry, but I think also it's still framed in terms of the pathos still seeps through the poem, I think, at the end. I think he was a real sort of social realist, you know, in the sense that he was sort of saying that actually, you know, I can contemplate on my life, but actually what happens in life, you know, this is life. You know, life doesn't always happen like a Jane Austen novel where everything ends in marriage and everybody's happy.
But you see, I mean, to me, that last stanza, the words, it all gets a bit shorter. It's very in representing, in a way, I think, Florence. And then these last couple of lines, I think if you read them together, even though it ends with despair, he's actually saying, really what he's saying is, look, even if I may be despairing, actually you, Florence, you're caring for me, you're looking after me.
I agree, yes. No, I can definitely see that. So I can see the context around that, around hope. But I think we've got to really think about the audience for this poem. You know, is he writing this for his readership? Or is he writing this for Florence? You know, because it says after the title for F-E-H, for Florence Emily Hardy. So we've got that idea of it's obviously written for her. Is this to please her? What's the purpose of this poem? And there is a sense in it that I'm thinking Hardy, there's for me always the cynical Hardy about relationships. And there's the Hardy that yearns to be happy. And I think that paradox for me between those two things is something that needs to be extrapolated further, I think, within Hardy studies.
Christopher, this poem, I think we should be cards on the table. It's probably not one of my favourite of Hardy's poems, but maybe you have a different view.
No, I think it's quite a nice little lyric. I don't think it's as vivid and atmospheric and as many of his poems, and I don't think he's pushing himself linguistically in the same way. So some of the really striking metaphors and images you get in other poems aren't there. It's a much plainer affair. It was published in 1922, so he's now 82, pretty old man, and was dedicated to Florence. What happens, of course, in the poem is that characteristically it goes into this melancholy reflection, which is what you tend to get in late Hardy, a melancholy reflection about all the things he's done. No one's noticed, no one's paid any attention. I mean, this is ridiculous. He's one of the most famous writers, if not the most famous literary writer in the language at this time. So the idea that his achievements have gone for naught strikes me as faintly absurd.
I sometimes think as here I sit of things I have done, which seemed in doing not unfit to face the sun. Yet never a soul has paused a whit on such, not one. There was that eager, strenuous press to sow good seed. There was that saving from distress in the nick of need. There were those words in the wilderness. Who cared to heed? Yet can this be full true or no? For one did care, and, spiriting into my house, to, fro like wind on the stair, cares still, heeds all and will, even though I may despair.